Hello everybody, today we're looking at the top 8 decks from the UK Games Expo. There was actually 3 events, which I was partaking in some of those as well. So we're going to look at the top 8 decks from every day. It does also include myself, as I did make the top 8 in the day that I played the main event. I also got my hands on this enchanted Ursula Sea Witch Queen, ignore the green screen, in a draft game. And the top 4 players from each day got their hands on this new exclusive Disney Lorcana convention playmat. It's going to be available at a bunch of other conventions throughout the year, but a really nice prize as it was the first event you could get your hands on this mat. A friend of mine sold it for around £250. Possibly worth a bit more at this moment in time as well. Obviously, as more conventions happen, you would imagine it's going to decrease in price. But also, the first place prize was 96 booster packs, which is a lot. It was £5 entrance, minimum 3 packs you got back from it. So just a really awesome event. Big shout out to the organisers at PPO, and also a big shout out to Ravensburger, who were involved directly in it. I also want to give a shout out to all the people involved in the event. I had so much fun meeting people. I also want to give a special mention to Emily Abadira, who is the artist of this card here, B King Undisputed. She was at the event. I actually played draft against her and she beat me. So I think she is officially the best Disney Lorcana artist / player. Apparently it was her first ever game, but she just had those card gaming skills and absolutely whacked me. So big up. First deck we're looking at is actually the gentleman who I played in the final round on Friday. So we were on table 2 going into the last round. So you would imagine whoever wins finishes in the top 4 and gets their hands on the playmat. I did actually come out on top against Lokibot, who was playing a Ruby Sapphire deck, which was built to beat Bucky. Now, in the game that we played, I won the first game relatively comfortably, but then in the second game, they cleared my board with Sisu. However, I then thought I was about to concede, but I managed to get my Tamatoa and string a bunch of items together, I think to tap my dime for 8 lore to take the game from nowhere. But Loki was really looking at dealing with their opponents with Bucky decks. So Diablo is being able to be dealt with Pegasus and Brawl. B King Undisputed is a really interesting card. It's a card which caused me a lot of problems over the weekend. It's one we're going to talk about a lot more, especially in Ruby Sapphire. But just a really interesting take on Ruby Sapphire with the Great Stone Dragon, Fishbone Quill. Now, what I do want to talk about is with Pegasus here. I've seen a lot of players utilizing Pegasus and Cruella de Vil, possibly even the Jafar, the 2-cost cards, Cruella and Jafar, that are 3/2s and have evasive in your turn to deal with Diablo. My concern with those cards is Diablo can shift in and instantly sing, let the Storm Rage on to remove them. So I'm personally not too convinced by these cards as a way of consistently dealing with Diablo. But it did work for Lokibot. They told me they took down the deck 3 times on the day, and they managed to squeeze into the top 8 despite falling to myself. I also want to give a big shout out to Lokibot's family. Super wholesome. Couple of young ones that I got to sign their playmats, and they were super, super awesome. That was a big highlight of the trip for me. So big shout out to them. But of course then, if I was on table 2 against Lokibot going into the last game, I won it in 2-0 fashion. You'd expect that I would in fact finish in the top 4, but I didn't. I somehow finished 8th. Can someone explain that to me? I still don't understand. So I had a record of 5-1, but there was, I think, 5 of us tied on 5-1. I think the top table took an ID, which whatever, it is what it is. I was like, Judge, there's been a mistake. There's been a mistake. Yeah. Now, what you might notice is my deck is a bit wonky. 4 lucky dimes is actually a error. That's not true. I must have sent off the wrong list. There's not 4 lucky dimes. There was only 2. I promise. That's my mistake when I sent the list off in a rush yesterday. But there was only 2 dimes. I promise. I am tempted to play 3 lucky dimes though. But you'll notice only 2 Mickey Mouses. Now, is this by choice? No. I just arrived in Birmingham and realized I only had 2 Mickey Mouses. I'm not very organized. I need to actually do a big collection organizing stream in the next week or so. But I love Blue Steel. I think Blue Steel is great. The other things that I would probably look at changing in this deck is I'm not actually convinced I like Beast Tragic Hero. I think I had 2 copies of Beast Hard-Headed instead of the 2 copies of Lucky Dime, which I've obviously sent off by mistake. At the end there. But Fire the Cannons as well as Baboom are really good ways of dealing with Diablo. Obviously, you can ramp into Grab Your Swords as well. You can also ramp into Tinkerbell to deal with Bucky and remove Bucky before it's a real problem. I also went for Audrey Ramirez as another 5-cost character that can sing Grab Sword, Whole New World, Let It Go. They have Ward. I'm not a huge fan overall of Audrey Ramirez. I'd probably prefer to go more heavy on the Tamatoas and the Mickey Mouses. Overall, Sapphire Steel, a deck I really like. If you want to see my most updated version of the deck, you can check out my meta report I posted a day or two ago. I think Sapphire Steel is great. This was kind of my version that I strung together. I borrowed a few cards as well, trying to get my my collection a little bit more sorted. It was my first time playing Sapphire Steel in person. I really enjoyed it. The only deck I lost to was Ruby Amethyst. I missed ramp on game 2, and on game 3 I got rather greedy. My opponent was at 4 ink. I could have played either Dime or Aerial. They had, I think, a Queen's Castle down on the board. And then I was like, okay, well, Tremaine's not a threat, so I'll just play my Aerial. Then I'll follow up with a Dime the following turn. And I got B-King Undisputed. And that was really the only misplay I made the whole day. I felt like I played very, very well. But that one game was somehow enough for me only to finish 7th, which I'm not going to lie, felt very wrong. It did not quite feel like that should be the case, to be honest. 5-1 record in Swiss, finishing 7th. I'm still salty, as you might be able to tell. But anyway, let's look at the other players that finished above me. This player also with the same record. Not certain exactly who it was that beat me, but I know that one of the players in the top 8 did beat me, and that was the Ruby Amethyst player. This one's also a Ruby Sapphire deck with Scuttle. Man, we've got to talk about Scuttle. I think Scuttle is terrible. I really don't like the card in these decks. If you do the maths on Scuttle, it's obviously the same maths as Aerial. Aerial, you need around 20 songs for her to be an 80% hit rate, which means she's missing 20% of the time, which is actually really bad. But Aerial being Singer 5 obviously kind of makes up for that. She's still good even if she misses to a degree. Whereas Scuttle is going to miss far more often because you're not going to be playing even near 20 items. And if it misses, it is so bad. I really, really don't like the card. Of course, when it hits, it's great. It can sing one jump ahead. Personally, I'm a non-believer in Scuttle. The amount of items here, there's 7, 10, 12, 14 items. So I think you're looking at around a 70% hit rate, which sounds okay. I would actually phrase it as a 30% miss rate. Scuttle, I'm a Scuttle hater until there's a deck which wants to play significantly more items. I do think there's room maybe for a Sapphire deck with heavy on the items, one that's not playing steel. Maybe you could use Maurice's Workshop, which is this 3-cost item. Whenever you play an item, you may pay 1 to draw a card. That could be interesting. 2 copies of Grammatala. Think you want to play more of those. Similarly, I would play more copies of How Far I'll Go. Great Stone Dragon. You could play it, but not at the expense of Fishbone Quill. Overall, deck looks solid. Again, main thing, I would just remove these Great Stone Dragons. I would play 4 Fishbone Quills. I would remove the Scuttles and play more copies of Grammar Tala. That would be my way of doing it, and probably a 4th Ice Block. Deck looks very solid, though. Just a few little things I would personally change, but I like that there's Be Prepared, Lady Tremaine, Medusa, and Sisu. Bit of a mix of everything. I also like the 4 copies of Tamatoa. Nice one. All right, on to another player that finished 5-1. This one is quite possibly the deck I lost to. How many copies of B-King Undisputed? No copies, so it's not the deck I lost to. Only one Flynn Rider. Definitely seems like Flynn Rider is the way to go for Ruby decks at the moment. So I would wager that moving forwards, you want to play the Flynn Rider and the Sisu package for these Ruby and Amethyst decks. Ursula Mad Sea Witch Queen is not a card I like. Only 2 Brawls seems like it's not really enough in my opinion. Pegasus, similar. Not really sold on that, but I do like the inclusion of Sorcerer's Spellbook as well as the Goofy for some more aggressive lore gain. I think Sorcerer's Spellbook in particular is a really interesting option for Ruby Amethyst. Also Teeth and Ambitions as a more consistent way of dealing with Diablo, although I wouldn't want to put Teeth and Ambitions in at the expense of Brawl. I would want to play 4 copies of Brawl, and then I would start thinking about Teeth and Ambitions. Overall, I think this is a solid take on Ruby Amethyst, although I think what we've seen from the weekend, the meta is developing quite fast, and this is maybe looking a little bit unoptimized. But good job to this player still. Top 4, Mufasa. Oh, goodness. Mufasa finished above me. Well, I will remind you, I had the same record as Mufasa. 5-1. Only lost once, okay. But tiebreakers did me dirty. But this looks like a really... I didn't play against this player. It looks like a really good build. I actually really like this take on Mufasa. I'm hard to please, guys, all right? If there's a deck I don't really like the look of, I'm going to be honest about it. But if there's a build I like, I'm also going to tell you I like it. And I like the look of this Mufasa list. In fact, this might be my favorite looking Mufasa list that I've seen so far. So good job to Sean. I like it. You've got Milan in there as the 1-drop, plus then the Shift Milan. I do think it's quite interesting to play Perdita in these decks because you can res Flynn Rider for some late game luring. You can res Mother Gothel to heal it with Rapunzel potentially instantly as well, right? Your Perdita quest, you pull in Mother Gothel, that gives you a Rapunzel a target. And you can also pull in your Mulan, which could also, of course, be Rapunzel healing, but it could also give you an instant shift target for this Mulan. I guess you would want it to stick on the board for a turn before you shift it. But Perdita allows you to have more Mulan shift targets without playing more weak Mulan cards, right? So I actually really like the look of Perdita in these decks. That would be the only thing I would argue I would want to change. Not convinced by Sisu without the 3-cost Sisu. I think 3-cost Sisu would also be a really nice inclusion in this deck. For the Flynn Rider synergy, you play the Flynn on 2. Sisu on 3 is really good when going first. But the deck looks really, really solid to me. I like it. Personally, I would probably not play Scar. I would probably not play the Maleficent Dragons. I would play more copies of Surfer Stitch. And I would try to get that Perdita in there somehow as well. But a deck, I like the way it's been built. Good job to Sean. Congrats on the top 4. They did get the play mat. Again, they did have the same record as me. I'm still salty, guys, okay? Table 2 to 7th. Somebody explain it to me. The guy I beat finished 8th with 1 loss more than me. So how did I finish 7th? I still don't understand. Anyway, I next have Nathan Mills, who finished 3rd. I think this player also had the same record as me, and this is actually who beat me. Yes, 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 this is exactly who beat me. So Nathan definitely deserved to finish above me. Definitely some interesting cards in this one, such as Yen Sid. Now, I have to say, I quite like Yen Sid. If you have a Magic Broom down and you play Yen Sid, it's like a Maleficent 3 cost for 2, right? It draws you a card. If you can get double Broom down, you can lure for 3. Now, realistically, with only 4 brooms, that is not going to happen very often. I've been, as many of you will have seen from my Meta Report video, testing a Magic Broom Steel deck with 4 copies of this broom and 4 copies of the 2-cost broom and Yen Sid. And even in that deck, I found the Yen Sid to be incredibly inconsistent. So I don't think it's the way to go in these decks of Yen Sid. But what I will say is I do think the card has a lot of potential moving forwards as we get more brooms. And what I will also say is I really love this Magic Broom card. It's similar to China the Box Followers, which many of you will know is a card I've been a very big fan of. No Flynn Rider, no Sisu in this one. Does feel like it would be better to remove the Yen Sid, remove the Maleficent for those cards. Be King Undisputed was the card which absolutely, well and truly, unequivocally wrecked me in our matchup. I won very, very comfortably game 1. As Sapphire Steel, I should be having a good matchup into Ruby Amethyst, particularly without the Flynn Rider. But then game 2, I missed Ramp. Partly, maybe you could argue, due to my single 2 copies of Mickey. It happens with Sapphire Steel. But then in game 3, I fundamentally misplayed. I learned my lesson the hard way, playing into Be King Undisputed, which is, of course, the art that Emily did, who beat me in draft. I was like, you cost me the tournament. But really, really good card. I would play 4 copies of it in these decks. Being able to sing it with Merlin, Rabbit, and Merlin Goat is huge value. Queen's Castle, Tremaine, Medusa, 4 copies of Be Prepared. Very greedy list, but honestly, I respect it. This one's going to struggle into Bucky. But I think all Ruby Amethyst decks are going to struggle into Bucky. So maybe just being greedy on the Be Prepared and accepting you're bad into Bucky, but trying to give yourself better coverage into other matchups is a really good idea. Overall, Nathan deserved to beat me. No doubt about that. I learnt my lesson the hard way about playing around Be King Undisputed, and it's not a mistake I'm going to make again. Now, the top 2 players, I believe, took a split in the finals. They took an ID, which is possibly what caused my weird ranking. I don't know. I'm still confused by it. But anyway, this was Isaac Murray, who was playing Ruby Sapphire, also on Great Stone Dragon, no Fishbone Quill, which is very, very interesting. I say interesting. Really, what I want to say is suboptimal, but that would be a little bit unfair seeing as they finished 2nd. I just don't really see how you can play this deck without Fishbone Quill. This deck is all about ramping up so quickly. In order to beat Bucky reliably, you're needing to get to that 7 to 8 ink as quickly as possible to play your Sisu or your Be Prepared. So I'm very surprised to see that. I do think 4 copies of Judy Hopps is really fascinating. Going to help you in the mirror to deal with your opponent's Lucky Dimes in particular. Scrooge McDuck Manor is also a card which I really like to see the inclusion of. I think it's a really interesting card in the mirror matchups in particular. And I think it is just a very solid card. 1 jump ahead into Tala with How Far I'll Go. 4 copies is something I like to see. 4 copies of Aerial. Okay. Now, Isaac, I'm going to apologize because I didn't see the Aerials. Most players are not playing Aerial in their Ruby Sapphire decks because they want to go for the control options instead. But Ariel is really, really fascinating, no doubt. Being able to tap it with your diamond mirror matchup, she's very difficult to remove. Can't be Sisu'd, can't be hit by the Maleficent Dragon. Overall, I'm going to be honest, I don't like the look of this Ruby Sapphire deck, but it's definitely something different, and it certainly worked very well for Isaac. So big up to Isaac. All right, and the other deck which made the top 2, because I think these players split, if I'm not mistaken. Apologies if I've got that wrong. Pretty sure they did, though, as I was literally sat next to them. We have a Diablo deck. Hooray, everybody's favorite deck. How does it look? It looks pretty good. Yeah, I actually really like the setup. One morph, I don't really like the look of particularly. Babooms are definitely an interesting choice. Can't really hate on it too much. Morph without Tinkerbell. I think with Tinkerbell, I could get behind the morph a little bit more because you can Tink on 4 in mirrors to remove your opponent's Bucky, for example. That could be really powerful. The rest of the deck I really like. I think just the morph and the Zeus's are the 2 cards I personally wouldn't play. But the deck looks very solid. Good job to Gary. All right, that was day 1. I finished 7th, and I'm criticizing all the people who finished above me. I'm still salty that I finished 7th. I still don't understand, man. Anyway, up next, day 2. Day 2, we have Matt from Lorcana Player, who, Lorcana Player, you guys might know, it's a nice little website. Highly recommended. Matt's a very lovely chap, and was playing Ruby Sapphire. Rather slowly, I've heard, Matt. Just what I've heard. I've heard that Matt is quite a slow gamer, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Just what I've heard. I just thought I would pass that information on to give you guys a little bit more entertainment value. One love, Matt. I'm sorry. Go check out Lorcana Player. All right. Judy Hopps ×2. Very interesting. Vitalosphere, also fascinating. This is a pretty terrible card. However, what it's great at doing is giving your Maui that extra little bit of strength to remove a Queen's Castle in a single swoop, which can be a huge deal. You deny the card draw potentially, you deny that 2 lore, and 2 lore can be all the difference, of course, in a game of Lorcana. So Vitalosphere, personally not what I would run, but very interesting to see it nonetheless. Obviously just a cheap card for Flavisham to be hitting as well. 1 jump ahead, only 2 copies. I can't get behind that. I want to see 4 1 jump aheads every single time in Ruby Sapphire. You're all about that ramp, no treble. But what I do like to see is the Sisu's here, particularly the uninkable Sisu. I think is really, really cool to see because it's just a solid card, and obviously it's inkable, which this deck struggles with in terms of uninkable count, and you can shift in the big Sisu, which is nice. Judy Hopps as, again, a mirror tech to deal with Lucky Dime. Only 2 copies of How Far I'll Go. I just feel like this deck is lacking a little bit in the 1 jump ahead and How Far I'll Go department. They're cards I would always want to play 4 copies of, personally. I love that there's a single Tremaine and a single Be Prepared in there to keep opponents on their toes. Also going for a single Scar. Not personally a card I think is worth overplaying, like the 4th Dragon. I would probably want to drop the Scar. Maybe drop down the Sisu Daring Visitors. Maybe play a 4th Ice Block. But overall, really, really solid list. Yep, good job to Matt. Well played. Up next, Nathan again. Also got the top 8. They beat me on the Friday, and they were here again, same list. Worth noting, I didn't play in the main event on the Saturday, but I did play in a side event where I did take down Jan Moyen, who's rank 1 on the PB leaderboard in the finals. Unlucky, my friend, but we split. It was fine. It was a good game. It was very, very close. Up next, we have Kimberly, who is a very good friend of the channel. She also made the top 8 using Ruby Sapphire. Now, this looks like a list I like the look of a lot more, with one exception. Remove these 2 Scuttles, Kim. 2 more Grammartalas. Scuttle is bad, guys. I'm telling you. Scuttle sucks. I really hate this card. Now, the other thing that's interesting about this deck is only 2 Develop Your Brains. Again, I would prefer to see 4 in there, ideally, personally. Also, 4 Be Prepared is very, very heavy on the Be Prepared with no Tremaines. I think that's really interesting and a very reasonable approach. A lot of players are not going to expect that, and I think that's quite cool to see. Deck looks very solid. I think, again, the main thing that jumps out here is the Scuttles, only 2 Talas and only 2 Develop Your Brains, but the rest looks really great. If you just remove Scuttles for like two Talas, I hate Scuttle. I'm a Scuttle hater. Up next, we have Bucky Boy. This one has Tinkerbells, no morphs, 2 Grab Your Swords, which is going to be nice in the mirror, 2 Zeus. Never been a big fan of Zeus personally, especially when you've got Strength of a Raging Fire. Only 2 Aladdins. Personally, I would just remove the 2 Zeus for 2 Aladdins. Something like that would be more like what I would play. But list looks very solid. We've got Ruby Amethyst from Jim. This one with the Flynns and the Sisus and Peter Pan Shadowfinder. which is also an art by Emily Abadira, who is at the event, but no Bee King Undisputed. That's the one thing that I don't like about this list. I'm also not really convinced by the Minnie Mouse Rafiki openers. I would be much more tempted personally to play Chernobog Magic Brooms. I think they're pretty good into Bucky. But each of their own. I think the one drops are not that great, regardless of what you go for in Ruby Amethyst, although Amethyst does have lots of interesting options. These are personally not two I would go for. I think with the Flynn Rider setup, Chernobog's Magic Broom, I really like both of those cards, so that's personally what I would go for. 3 Crabs, 3 Be Prepareds. Yeah, main thing for me is I would be more interested in playing 4 copies of Bee King Undisputed, maybe reducing the crab count as a result. Not sure about Pan Shadow Finder. Definitely an interesting card to try and deal with Diablo. The thing is, if they get the Diablo down into the Cove, it has 3 willpower. The other thing is Peter Pan Shadow Finder, unlike Brawl, unlike Teeth and Ambitions, can't remove Diablo while it's readied. But it's definitely a nice tech card to have in there. I actually think it's a really, really good option. So I really like this list. Again, for me, I would probably look at changing the 1-drops, and I would be likely to reduce the count maybe of the Bee Preps and the Crabs to fit in 4 copies of Bee King Undisputed. A lot of players are using 3. I would play 4. I think the card is phenomenal. I really, really do. Especially because you can sing it with these 2. All right, up next, into the top 3, we have another Bucky Boy deck. This one with a signed contract. What the heck? Whenever an opponent plays a song, you may draw a card. That is fascinating. Okay, there's only one of them. There's 3 Sudden Chills, which could be a little bit too much. 3 Diablos. I wonder if that's because Stu only has 3 Diablos, but also none of the 1-cost Diablos. 2 Prince Johns. I think Prince John is a nice card in the mirror. 1 Flynn Rider. 3 Grab Your Swords. Pretty interesting list. It feels like they're maybe trying to squeeze in a few too many things. I would probably prefer just to see 4 Ursulas and 4 Strength of Raging Fires, or no Ursulas kind of thing, if that makes sense. But yeah, looks like a really solid build. Hard to really go wrong with it. I wonder how the signed contract performed for them. But now we're into the top 2. We have Gary Michael. Now, I don't believe that day 2 was a split, because from my understanding, the player in first went into the last round with a tie. They tied with Lorcana player, Matt, because I had Lorcana player plays quite slowly. That's how I know it. So I'm pretty sure that this was not a tied top 2 because they didn't split the last round. They didn't ID, if that makes sense. But anyway, this is a... And apologies if I'm wrong on that. This is a Emerald Steel deck with 2 Babooms. I think we saw this list actually from day 1 as well, with that 1 morph in there as well. So good job to Gary. Now, top place goes to Calva82, also known as Paul, who is from my locals. Let's go. Specie locals are on top. In fact, just to flex on you guys, this gentleman I beat in the final, sorry Paul, of the set champs at our locals. I hit him with Prince John's Purple Dream. They were also playing Ruby Sapphire. I won the coin flip, and I opened up with triple Merfolk by turn 2 and Prince John on turn 3. I mean, it just doesn't get dirtier than that, does it? So Paul didn't really have much of a chance with his Ruby Sapphire deck in the set 3 set champs against me, but has stayed with his trusty Ruby Sapphire, and this is a deck I like the look of a lot more. And it's Paul's from our locals, of course I do. Maybe I'm biased, but this is just much more how I would build the deck. 4 copies of 1 Jump Ahead, 4 Fishbone Quills, 4 Ice Blocks. Everything is ticking all the right boxes. I think the one thing I don't like, perhaps, is this Sisu, but the Sisu with the Icebox is really good. Obviously, it's uninkable. I really like it. I think maybe like a Tremaine could enter the mixer as an option, but honestly, I really like this list. I really like this list. Good job, Paul. Up next, also, you guys are going to be seeing more of Paul soon. I'm filming some IRL content with Paul very, very soon, so you're going to be seeing him on the channel. Up next, we have an Amber Emerald deck. Let's go, $7. Worth noting, this is the Sunday now. I did actually play in the Sunday with the intention of dropping after 1 round. Jan Moyen and I were going to play the first round, get our kind of booster packs while we were waiting for our draft to start. And then we did a little draft, which Jan beat me in the final as well. Emily Abadira, the artist, beat me round 1-1-0, and then she had to run off. So then I got the win because it was a best of 3. But then I made it to the finals, and Jan beat me in the finals. So good job to him. We got a mat each, essentially. So here we have $7 on Amber Emerald. Amber Emerald is one of the decks I am most interested in. And this is a very, very spicy looking list. We have Pride Lands with Flynn Rider as the 2 cheap Prince cards to move into the Pride Lands to give yourself the cost reduction. Prince John, believe it or not, is also a prince. I know, mind-blowing stuff. Can you believe it? But that's pretty interesting. You've got a bunch of different princes to move in. Obviously, the Flynn Rider here is a 2-cost shift target onto this Flynn Rider, which is something to look out for. No aerial in this one. At the top end, only 1 copy of We Don't Talk About Bruno. Fascinating way of building the deck. I do think that a way of building the deck which might be better is with aerial, with We Don't Talk About Bruno, painting the roses red, and the muses. It is a deck I'm hoping to bring you guys some IRL footage of this weekend, so be looking out for that. That is my plan. Ring the Bell, very fascinating deck. Sign the Scroll. Honestly, not how I would build it, but it just shows you that there's a lot of potential here for Amber Emerald still. Very, very interesting setup. Big shout out to Dolo7. Pat yourself on the back, mate. Piglet Poo, Pirate Captain stays winning. And next we have Danny O'Donnell with Fan the Flames. Oh my giddy aunt. This is like a set 2 hyper aggro list. This is what I was playing in set 2. Fan the Flames and LeFou, ready your characters. And then Arthur, you have like an infinite loop, right? You go Arthur, you quest with Arthur, you bounce like something back to your hand, then you play LeFou. And you ready your Arthur again. Pretty cool deck to see here in the mix. So this is actually a deck I would imagine is a lot better than people realize right now. A lot of the decks in the metagame are rather slow, with the Ruby Sapphire decks in particular. Obviously, the concern is that Ruby Sapphire decks can ramp up so quickly now. Even with all of your aggro, you might not quite cross the line in time. But that is awesome to see this deck do so well. Oh, I forgot to mention, I did play in this event on the Sunday, and I said I dropped after 1 round, but I actually lost my round 1. I lost to Amber Steel Songs player, and she tried to Zeus my aerial, and I was like, oh no, it's fine, you can take it back. Thinking, you know, I was 5 lore away, I have my dime down, I have my aerial, and also I knew I was going to drop, so they were going to get the win anyway. So they tried to Zeus my aerial. I'm like, no, you can take it back, it's fine. Which I wouldn't have done if I was, you know, really competing. Because that's obviously just a misplay, and it's important to not be too nice on these things because that is just a misplay. However, I'm very glad I did, because my opponent then pulled off the most ridiculous play you've ever seen, which was Rise of the Titans onto my Lucky Dime. All right, fine, my Lucky Dime's gone. A whole new world to then find One Last Hope, which is the new Steel song, which is in the starter deck, which gives a hero character the ability to challenge readied characters. They gave it to their aerial, which has 2 strength. Then they used quested with the queen to give their aerial 6 strength to remove my aerial and my dime in 1 turn, and I lost. Yeah. And I didn't even finish it because it wasn't all over. Then in game 3, basically I had a terrible game where I missed ramp, and I had like 9 or 10 items on the board and 2 Tamatoas or something stupid, or like 1 big Tamatoa, 10 items and a dime. So I was able to quest with Tamatoa for a turn, tap the dime and get to 20, from 0 to 20 in literally 1 turn. All they needed was a song to beat me because they had like 3 C-piece flute on the board and they were getting to 17. They did have the song, they had a bunch of songs, but that was my out. But one of the songs they had was I Find in My Flatterman, which could remove 10 of my items at once, trigger the C-piece flutes. Anyway, I digress. GG to that person. They played very, very well. Up next, we have another Ruby Amethyst deck. This one with only 1 Flynn Rider, with 1 Pegasus, 2 Brawls. We saw this one earlier, didn't we? In one of the other games. Up next, we have Lewis Malone with a Ruby Sapphire deck. 4 Scuttles! Oh my goodness. I don't think that's good. How many items? 4, 8, 12, 14. Scuttle is bad, guys. You heard it here first. Scuttle is good one day. I don't think that day is quite yet. I think you need to be playing closer to 20 items to seriously consider Scuttle. I think he's just too much of a tempo loss when he misses, which is very often. When he hits, he is very good because you can sing 1 jump ahead, but I don't think you want that kind of inconsistency in this deck. Probably. But maybe I'm wrong. Let me know if you think I'm wrong on Scuttle. But good job to Lewis. No Tremaines in this one. 2 aerials. Maybe we saw this one earlier. Cool. Up next, another Ruby Sapphire deck. This one with only 2 ice blocks, but has 3 copies of the Inkable Sisu, which I think is nice to see. 3 B preps, 1 Tremaine, 3 How Far Ago. Nice looking list. I really like this one overall. Personally, I think it's a little bit very low on the ice blocks actually, particularly if you're playing 3 Sisus, 3 Medusas, 4 Brawls. I think it's just worth playing more ice blocks. But apart from that, I really like the setup. Nice one. Up next, we have Jim T3, who is on Peter Pan Shadow Finder. We looked at this list earlier. Again, solid build. I think my criticisms of it is no Beaking Undisputed, and maybe I would play different 1-drops personally. All right, now the top 2. Now, these 2 did split. Oh, it's my nemesis. Nathan Mills, the guy who got me with this Beaking Undisputed on day 1 on the Friday and was my only defeat. Big shout out to Nathan Mills then, because I know the top 2 players split and they did a die roll to see who got the signed mat. Nathan won the signed mat on the die roll. But the winner, well, not the winner because it was tied. It was a split. The other player, Calva82 again. Oh my goodness, is it Paul again? No, it's actually not. It's come up as Calva82 because Paul gave their ticket to their friend Lenny. Lenny is also from my locals. So we had 3 players in the locals from my locals playing this weekend. It was my job to win on Friday. I bottled it, but Paul and Lenny absolutely cleaned up. Big shout out to those guys. You're going to be seeing them on the channel again pretty damn soon. And yeah, I'm going to be getting all their thoughts on how to play their specific decks they won with later on in the week, because they did actually tell me to kind of talk through it. I know that Lenny just said that Diablo is very unfair, although he used slightly more choice language for that, but he said Diablo is very unfair. That's basically his thoughts. And again, probably when I post videos of them in the next week, I'll get some more kind of in-depth thoughts on how to play the decks, how to play the matchups, since they won these events with them. This, I think, was slightly inspired by Moyen as well, because Moyen was at the event. I was talking to Paul and Lenny the night before, alongside Moyen, about kind of what cards to go for, and I think the Tinkerbells got added in there a little bit late. But overall, I think that Lenny enjoyed the deck. I still don't like Zeus that much personally, but I guess it's good in the mirrors to remove beasts and whatnot. Yeah, list looks solid. Very, very close to how I would play it, if not identical, actually. Probably just wouldn't play Zeus personally, because I'm a bit of a Zeus hater. But big shout out to Lenny. Big shout out to Paul. Big shout out to Nathan Mills, who took me down on day 1. Big shout out to everyone that was at the event. It was an awesome event. All the organisers, the judges, etc. I also want to give a final shout out to LokiBot and the family, and also to Jimmy, who is a youngster that played in one of the side events and won it. And they had 2 Rockstar Stitch champion mat. I gave them a game and it was a 1-1 draw before they had to run off. So shout out to everyone I met at the event. It was an awesome event. Shout out to Emily Abadira for the awesome artwork on Beaking Undisputed and for beating me in a draft as well. All right, guys, that's the recap of the event. Very, very soon, I'm very excited that I'm going to be having IRL Disney Lorcana gameplay content for you. Fingers crossed. First recording session is this weekend. Look out for it. Watch party as well for the Disney Lorcana challenge. Woo! It's a good time to be a Lorcana fan. Let's go. Thanks again. See you very soon. Bye.